Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Records and Rants. My name is Ice. Today we have a fantastic show for you. We're talking about someone who is in the limelight still, but also has a checkered past. You all know the name. You read the title. We're talking about Yoko Ono today, but I can't do it without Dixon. How are you?
Ice, good to be back. Another edition of the 2024 edition of the Ice and Dixon Records and Rants show. Back again. How's it feel? You hitting your stride in the new year so far?
I think so. I think 2024 is going to be a good year. Let's say better than 2023.
Are you doing that? Are you doing that dry January?
Yeah, I kind of had a little slip up at some point. you know how it goes.
I hate to say it, but I did know how it goes. I have not had one drop of alcohol.
Really?
For the entire month of January thus far. And we're better than halfway through the month. And I'll tell you what, I've never been clearer. I've never been more focused in my life. I have a general sense of peace. I'm losing weight rapidly. Maybe not rapidly, but I feel more toned.
Hey,
it's positive.
That's awesome. That's really good. And a lot of people say that when they do the dry January thing, they see all these positive effects. Like alcohol is this poison that just keeps you down. But the problem is, it really is everywhere. It's in all social events. It's there when you go out to eat. And it's just, I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of a fun thing to do.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I had this moment of clarity. I feel like an alcoholic with these rare moments of clarity that I have. I look back on the times you and I shared together, and most of it was gathered around alcohol.
I know. Yeah, you're right.
And, they were all positive, good times. You wonder, would they have been as memorable or, something to look forward to if the alcohol wasn't involved? Two, do we have that much fun? Like, was it even that fun? But the physical contact, obviously, not I don't mean like, physical contact. I mean, the interaction,
Yes.
has always been a positive thing. And I something I enjoy, but the alcohol, it's a supplement to that, but I'm wondering if we really actually need it.
You are onto something, I think, Dixon. And I think that people should try to learn. I'm not saying cut it out completely, but I think people should try to learn to maybe have some fun without alcohol.
And I went to a concert last week, and I didn't have any alcohol at all. I had Diet Coke.
Nice.
And it worked out. I tell you what, I had a good time. I enjoyed it because usually, we go to concerts where we're half in the bag in the parking lot.
Don't even know what songs are playing, or don't even know who we came to see. Oh, who are you going to see? I don't know. We're here drinking.
Yeah. So it is one of those things. But if going forward in those situations, because I feel like our generation has really hit the bar scene home. I think millennials, really, it's always like bar related. I think going forward, I'm going to try to stick to tequila soda lime, which I think, from what I can tell, is the purest form of poison you can ingest and still be okay.
I tell you what, Dixon, I'm sure you remember this. It was when you were in for the holidays, and I had that poison concoction that you had dreamt up yourself. And I tell you what, when you say clean poison, there's no better way to describe it. You get tuned up. And they go down. They go down like literal water, and they taste great and refreshing.
It's refreshing. And I noticed the H-over, the hangover, isn't nearly as bad. But I have been doing some research. Big glass of water with a little bit of salt in it before you start drinking, and then salt in water again in the morning, just to kind of flush that system out.
I like that. I'm definitely going to try it.
And everybody says, "Oh, no caffeine, no caffeine." If you have like an espresso, like something really like high potency caffeine, like even maybe like I don't even know if an energy drink would do it. Maybe it would. I don't know. But like I think that helped me too. But it's been so long because I've been hungover. I don't even know what it's like anymore.
Why do hey? Well, that's really good to hear. I mean, like when being younger, and you were referencing these times earlier, but back when we were younger and just drinking all the time, like.
Yeah,
we were just hungover constantly. It was just, it was like every single day. So that's really no way to live. But it's really nice to. I'm very happy for you, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, well, it sounds like you're doing well too. I mean, one or two slip up isn't a big deal. I mean, it's at least you can accomplish something. You don't have to rely on a substance.
Yes.
I've declared this the year 2024 is the year of freedom, whether it be financial freedom, whether it be freedom from substances. You know, you and I, we dabble in the Zimbabwe's a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes.
If it's if it's go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That just brought something up because I had completely forgotten about this, and I don't know if you guys remember. Did we even mention this on the show that I was going to stop ingesting nicotine?
No, I don't think we talked about that. Now I know I've been on you, and people around you have been on you about this for a long time. I think because you know what? Because the vape, I get the vape. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Every young, attractive person in the world has a vape, and they constantly puff on it. And I think they smoke it more than they would if they actually smoked a cigarette.
1,000,000%. I totally agree with you.
Right.
But you just mentioning that the old Zimbabwe's,
yeah,
I like that name. But
yeah,
I'm looking here. Right on my desk is a package of Zin that I purchased back when you came in for the holidays. This is now empty, but this was empty probably 2 weeks ago, maybe even longer than that. And I have not ingested any nicotine since then, and I just totally forgot about it. I don't crave it anymore.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, I know, and I was shocked when you mentioned it because I'm like, oh my God, I don't even remember the last time I had any nicotine products.
Wow, that's big. Wow, look at you. Well, that's congratulations. That's a big step.
Thank you.
That's really something. Wow. Okay. And you have no withdrawals, no DTs, no cravings, like you were saying.
I'll tell you what I did at the beginning. I really did. I was getting a little ornery, and you know what? These Zins, they're a lifesaver because they really helped me to get. If I was ever super pissed off and I knew that I was like upsetting my fiance, God bless her for dealing with me, but I would just I'd pop in a Zin and be like, okay, Ice, calm the hell down, and I was fine.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's you kind of get back to reality.
Yeah.
That's what I think too. Is I think that back in the hungover era, I think the nicotine hangover was worse than the alcohol hangover. Like you have like that dry mouth, your head's in a vice.
Yeah.
You have that sinus headache. It's that kind of thing. Like I feel like plays a big factor too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of headaches.
I know where you're going with this.
Yes. So I guess the backstory is you kind of brought this up. Well, no, you didn't. Not kind of. You brought this up, discussing the career of Yoko Ono and maybe her music and her role and maybe one of the biggest breakups of all time. And I texted you before BTS, and I said, I'm going to listen to these songs that are on a list of the best Yoko Ono songs, and they might create a literal headache if you listen to them after a while.
You're absolutely right. And like you said, where all this started was I saw a random video and it said why the Beatles broke up. I forget who it was by. It was, it has quite a few views. If you search it, I'm sure you'll find it. But it was a guy talking about how Yoko Ono was not the reason for the Beatles breakup, as everyone in popular culture would suggest. Beatles are a household name. You say the name Yoko Ono, and people are like, "Oh, that's the one that broke the Beatles up."
Right.
John. Right. It was John's wife.
Yeah.
And I just got super interested in it because I was watching it, and this guy was challenging that notion. So I started to dive in more into it and look at Yoko Ono's life and what really led to that, and try to form my own opinions on the whole thing. And as I went through, I had one thing in my mind, but as I got to the end of the research, I kind of came out on the other side thinking something else. But
really,
I did, and I think it's pretty. Yoko Ono is a difficult person to pin down. I've watched interviews. I've watched her horrible music. I think we should talk about that first. But
yeah. Sure.
She's an interesting character. But I think that's perfectly emulated in her music as to how nuts she is.
Yeah, that's really funny that you say that. Yeah, because I always heard like the jokes, or like I think it was like maybe on Family Guy or something, where all Yoko Ono does is scream, and it's I think it's true. It's true based on the on what's going on. So, how I remember seeing a video probably about a year ago, and it's John Lennon and Chuck Berry are on like a show, like a reunion show or something, or there's something happening and they're playing songs together, and Yoko Ono was in the background just screaming into a microphone, and Chuck Berry is making these eyes like, whoa, what the heck is happening? So at one point they just muted her mic, like they turned the mic off. So you had mentioned this, and everybody knows the connection between John Lennon and Yoko Ono and the Beatles. So I found this list from The Guardian, and The Guardian is, I don't know if you could trust The Guardian for a lot of stuff, UK publication, or was based out of the UK, but they actually came up with a list of the best Yoko Ono songs of all time. And if you read this, you are under the impression that, okay, it's avant-garde, it's art, it's pushing boundaries. And so I listened to Mine Train, which came out in 1971, which is supposed to be your best song. Also, Walking on Thin Ice, 1981, and Why from 1970. And it's one thing to say, okay, this is avant-garde, I kind of know what I'm getting into. It just makes absolutely no sense. Mine Train is just different sounds, her making different sounds. Yes. And then Why is just the word why and like an O sound over and over and over again. And yes. Walking on Thin Ice, it has lyrics, but it's still more like the same weird sounds. I guess the original video had, or the clip or whatever had, John Lennon or supposed John Lennon in the video. That has some lyrics. The thing is the music behind it is good. So I think that is probably a hangover from the Beatles production value that got involved. But it is. I had an open mind. It is awful. It is the most awful thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I don't know how anybody could actually listen to this and take it seriously, take it as art. It's incredible, incredibly bad.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And you pretty much hit on the exact notes that I wrote down for why I put absolutely bizarre and annoying. That's all I have for that. I think I turned it off after probably about like 30 seconds. I'm like, I can't even take this, because it is just her screaming the word why and oh, and like just like a banshee.
Yes.
And then you have Walking on Thin Ice, and I wrote down that it does have good music. I think for that era, I think it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
And then you just have Yoko just like speaking nonsense, and it just kind of ruins the whole vibe, at least for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was that was quite the, and to pick those out and say like this, like you're pretty much saying like this is all she has to offer. This is the best of the best. If you want Yoko Ono, these are the songs you listen to, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, it's not good. I just can't imagine that anybody would put this list together. And so I guess it's not that confusing, because you're gonna talk about this because you led the charge on this. And this is how you brought this up, is the connection between John Lennon and Yoko Ono and the breakup of the Beatles.
Yeah.
You can't imagine somebody as talented as John Lennon being into Yoko Ono and facilitating and supporting the supposed art she makes. With all that being said, I'm wondering if your research and what you're saying, because you said you might have had a change of heart on this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, John Lennon, at the surface level, stands up for peace, wants change in the world, you know, challenges the system, was on the watch list for the FBI or something for years. They try to get him deported, try to push the envelope. Personally, in his personal life, from what the word is John Lennon wasn't all that great of a guy. Like when they would do the love-ins or the peace-ins at the hotels, they would have still have a maid come in and clean so they could still protest. He had a son, Julian, who he basically abandoned when he was on the road. Kind of like an a-hole in general. So you wonder, there's got to be a lot of ego there on John Lennon's behalf, which I don't think I would like to think he didn't buy into, but I think he bought into it. And I think that's where the Yoko Ono thing comes in. I think with him, his personality, her personality, and everything else, it just maybe became too much, or like, oh, we're better than the Beatles. That's the kind of vibe I might get.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking while I was doing research. And again, I don't really follow the Beatles. I've never followed the Beatles, to be honest with you. I don't
Wow,
really know
that's something.
much. Yeah, I know. I don't know much about them, and I know you are a big Beatles
Yeah.
fan.
You know, you say that because the Beatles were my absolute first love. I started with the Beatles and I listened to everything else. So I remember the Beatles anthology came out in, I think, 95, and that was like a 3 or 4 part documentary. Every night a different part of the documentary was on ABC.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I remember my dad recorded it on VHS. And for whatever reason, he thought I would like it, and I did. And I watched it over and over again when I was 4 or 5 years old. I didn't
That's
know anything
awesome.
about it, but I kept watching it. And from that, and I remember that Christmas, I got um, the Beatles. I got 2 Beatles greatest hits cassettes for Christmas.
Oh, wow.
And they were like my first love. They were like, I was into the Beatles. I knew every song. I had their catalog. I knew it. And then I just like stopped listening to them. And I think that's kind of how the Beatles, not that they don't hold up, but I think everybody that got into music or started a band started with the Beatles and then grew from there.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty interesting how the Beatles were like ingrained into you. Like you were pretty much raised on the Beatles.
Yeah, and it wasn't like my parents were big Beatles fans. I mean, they were fans. You know, what I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
everybody's a general Beatles fan. I think.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody dislikes the Beatles. I don't know. Maybe there are people out there, but I it wasn't like we were like they were big, huge Beatles fans. It just happened to think like, okay, maybe this is it. Like I might appreciate this, and I did. I don't know how they had that foresight, but I did, and like I said, I it just became like a thing. Like I just stopped listening to them. I think because you heard everything, and like even with their new releases, like I'll check out, like they'll do like different reissues and things, and I'll check them out. But it's not like I like run out to get them or even like mention them or anything, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. Now let me ask you this: did you know anything about any of this stuff, like why they broke up, or any like personal interactions between the band themselves?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I did. I know that. I really don't know. Because I feel like wasn't Paul McCartney trying to take the band in a different direction, or Paul McCartney was kind of taking the reins?
Well,
and like, was that it or no?
So what happened near the end is Paul wanted to keep, and his thing was keep music live. He wanted to keep going on tour. He wanted to keep playing live music, and he said he's like that keeps us sharp. It keeps us practice. We're out there. We're playing raw. We're playing live. This is how you train as a musician. And I personally think that's fantastic, and I think that's true, and I think you should perform live for your fans. But a lot of the other Beatles were just over it, John especially. And near the end, well, their manager passed away, and then they got a new accountant to run the whole thing, who turned out to be a big sleazebag. But anyway, John was in cahoots with this manager, this new manager that they had, and Paul said, I think we should go back to being live after they released Abbey Road. And John called him an idiot. He said, "You're crazy. We should, keeping music live is stupid." And and then that's kind of like where the Beatles kind of end, because John and Yoko ran out of the room, and then John's like, "I'm breaking up the Beatles right now, and I'm spending all my time with you. Everything is with you."
Gosh.
Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
To bring your wife to a negotiation, like with the people that you've built a career and a sound and legacy with. I mean, they were only in their 20s, and even then, the Beatles were the biggest thing on the planet. I mean, you had Beatles, you had Elvis, you had the Beach Boys and the Beatles in the 60s competing creatively. You had them lead the British invasion. You had a total interest of British music here in America, and to sabotage all that, it just seems so ludicrous.
Yeah, and it seems like John was really the ringleader. Now, did John start the Beatles?
So you had the Beatles started in the Cavern Club in Liverpool, and it was Paul McCartney and John Lennon were together. And then I think George Harrison was in the mix. I remember seeing like photos, like they had like this real like beatnik style, and like with leather jackets and like kind of like this coiffed hair.
Yeah.
And they had Stu Sutcliffe was in the mix. There's all like, it was like always like the missing Beatle, how the Beatles started with the different guys. And then I think Ringo was like think he was like an afterthought. I feel like, but it was John and Paul McCartney together for years, starting it, and they met and they started the band, and then they just became who the Beatles are from there.
Yeah, because what's interesting is when I was doing my research on Yoko, I mean, obviously it was about the breakup, and I'm getting secondhand information about the Beatles themselves while I'm watching this. So John really seemed to be like the ringleader. Like he tried to direct the band where to go, kind of thing. He felt like he wanted to take the reins, and he was just above it all, above everyone, pretty much. And when Yoko came on, even more so.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's really when it started. Apparently, prior to bringing in Yoko, they were recording Sgt. Pepper, and at this point, John had met Yoko. And,
really, that early? I didn't realize that. Because when they break up, 1970?
Yeah, I think it was that year. I believe so.
Yeah, 69 or 70 had to be. Huh.
So I think prior to that, prior to that, John met her at an art exhibit, and John was still married at the time.
Okay.
But he fell in love with Yoko because she was just so dangerous, and I forget the exact word he used, but she was different. She was something different.
Okay. I respect that. I can respect that.
Yeah, no, I get it. But then eventually, John just completely abandons his wife Cynthia for this Yoko Ono. And then so during the now in my mind I'm saying like, oh, Yoko's feeding stuff into his ear. Yoko's saying, oh, don't listen to Paul, he's an asshole, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And it's shown because after they meet, it seems like John really gets upset because they were recording what was it, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band, that whole album. And John apparently just hated the entire album. He said he was pissed. He was complaining. He said, this is not going to work. He hated it. Well, it turned out it was like one of their best albums. And it spent 27 weeks in the #1 spot in the UK Billboard, like top 10.
Remember you listened to that and you didn't like it?
I did. God, oh no! Am I like John Lennon?
So, it's so funny because this you have to talk about. Yeah, we have to spend a minute talking about the trajectory of the Beatles.
Yeah,
because it's interesting to talk about when you talk about the legacy of the Beatles when they're going into that Sgt. Pepper era.
Yeah,
you talk about the British invasion and America's appreciation and craze over the Beatles, and then British music as a result. The Beatles were listening to. They were listening to Buddy Holly. They were listening to American rock and roll. They were listening to Elvis. Their style was a result of they were listening to old blues. They were listening to, American music. And John Lennon in particular was really into that Buddy Holly early American rock and roll. So without early American rock and roll, without Buddy Holly, without guys like that, there were no Beatles. So the Beatles get to the point where they're recording Sgt. Pepper. They're recording Rubber Soul. Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys hears Rubber Soul and he says, "This is the best thing I've ever heard. We have to do something like this. We have to top the Beatles.
Right.
This is it. This is music." They release Pet Sounds in 1966. So every member of the Beach Boys, except for his brothers, which were Carl Wilson and Dennis Wilson, were on Brian's team, but everybody else was like, no, we have a formula, we have a system, we have to keep selling records and cars and surfing. They're pushing the envelope. Pet Sounds comes out, it's a lukewarm response, right? Paul McCartney hears Pet Sounds and he says, this is the greatest album of all time. We have to top this. And they release Sgt. Pepper, and then John Lennon was anti Sgt. Pepper, Lonely Hearts Club Band. Brian Wilson is here is Sgt. Pepper. So
it's going back.
So actually before that, so he has Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
After Pet Sounds, they're working on Sgt. Pepper while the Beatles are writing Sgt. Pepper. Brian Wilson is like, we have to take this. We're doing something different. He's writing the album Smile, right? So Smile ended up becoming a doomed project, which we discussed this channel and the reissue.
We did.
Before, so I'm sure there's a link somewhere here.
Yeah, I'll put it up. I'll put it up right now, right here. That was a fantastic video of ours. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, and you didn't like that either, from what I understand. But it's so they go to do Smile, and they're on. Brian's kind of, he's tripping, and he's in his car, and he's driving down the Pacific Coast Highway with the top down, and he's with his friend. And one of the singles from Sgt. Pepper comes on, and he pulled over to the side of the road, and he's listening to the radio, and he looks at his friend, and he goes, "They did it." And the guy goes, "What?" He goes, "The Beatles already did it. They wrote the greatest song of all time. They wrote the greatest album of all time.
Wow.
I can't write Smile. It's over. They did it." And then there was a whole bunch of things that happened. The studio burned down. His mental health started deteriorating more. And that's where kind of the back and forth ended. And so it's such an interesting dichotomy between members of the band, how arguably their best works were met with some criticism and some fight from other members of the band.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if, if John had his way, that he would be able to stop that from coming out.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point that you make. It sounds like that's how it might have been. But what did John want to do? Just the same old thing?
Yeah, pretty much. And I honestly think that if Yoko was in the studio at this point, which John later takes her in, I wonder if it would have gotten canceled altogether, or John might have just left at that point right there.
Right.
Because he would have Yoko's backing,
For sure.
Yeah. So after Sgt. Pepper is when Yoko Ono comes into the recording studio and brings her in as a collaborator, which is like totally against their entire MO. Like the Beatles apparently have never had anyone in the studio except them. There are no guests allowed.
It. Yeah.
It's just them. But John just says, "I'm bringing in Yoko Ono. Like we're together. This is how it's going to be." And then she starts giving John some vocal tips on how to sing. Of all people, Yoko Ono giving vocal tips.
Gosh.
And apparently at one point someone throws down their headphones. I think it might have been Paul, and said, did you fucking say so? Who the fuck said that? Like getting all upset about it. Like, your mouth didn't move, Ringo. So who the fuck is talking? And it's fucking Yoko Ono, so big fight, might've gotten physical. We don't know. But Yoko tries to say that John wanted her there. Now, this is where I start to get conspiracy brain in my head.
Okay.
We all know certain women, maybe in our lives, maybe we see other guys with these girls that the girls just totally take over the life. The guy can't do anything without her, but he's madly in love with her. You can't get through to the guy saying that,
Sure.
This girl's ruining your life. You're not able to do anything. You can't talk to me anymore. You're a different person, whatever.
Yeah.
But the guy just goes along with it. I wonder if that was happening with John and Yoko. Do you think that she was such a toxic person and wife, partner, that she was saying, "I want to be in that studio. You take me to that studio, John. If you love me, you're taking me to that studio."
Yeah. Well, like you said, we see it play out. We've seen it play out. We see it play out. And I guess what's so shocking about it is that you have somebody like John Lennon, who's a superstar, who needs no, in my mind, coddling of his ego or really anybody to complete him. Just totally sacrifice his identity, his career, his life for somebody else. Now there's something to be said for that. If it's not toxic, those are choices that you might realistically make, and they might be the right choices.
Yeah.
But if there's red flags around and people are picking up on red flags, then perhaps those aren't the best decisions, right? And then in reality, if somebody's there to support you and add to your life and create a team like a relationship should be, there shouldn't be any divisions being caused or anything like that. And I think in reality, on the other party, if you have, like, if you're creating something or you're doing something and that's separate from your family life, that might be a good compromise for the other partner to make. And it sounds like that's not what was happening.
Exactly. I totally agree. In a healthy relationship, you would say, "Listen, this is my thing that I do.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. And, it's nothing against you. It's not that I don't love you, Yoko, whatever. I'm just going to do this." And then she would say, "Okay, wow, that's great. Go have fun with the friggin' Beatles. You guys are multi-million-dollar, $100 million. Yeah, go have fun with your Beatles." but
that's
but no, she
that's
had
great.
she had to infiltrate, and I almost think it's her whole avant-garde, artsy fartsy kind of thing. I wonder if it's that. It's like she just needs to insert herself into into one of the biggest things in the world at the time, which was the Beatles. So she just saw it as an opportunity. She's like, I'm going to take my art. I'm going to try to influence the Beatles. Maybe I'll be like their new manager or whatever. So I
hate to say it. Maybe there was an advantage point there. Like, oh, the Beatles. I get in with the Beatles. I have my own career I can launch, and that's it. Yeah. I mean, nobody would know who Yoko Ono is aside from her connection to John Lennon.
Yes. Exactly. And right around this point, when she starts getting brought in, that's when George gets in a huge fight with John, and then he leaves the studio, and John makes a little aside and says, "Oh, we'll just get Eric Clapton to replace him. We'll just play with him."
Oh my gosh!
And then like a month later, he does. John and Yoko play with Eric Clapton just to rub it in his face.
Yeah, because he played guitar on While My Guitar Gently Weeps, I believe.
Yes.
Eric Clapton's on that track. Oh my gosh. And George Harrison is one of the greatest guitarists of all time. George Harrison, in my mind, is the best Beatle.
Right, and I learned that a lot of people say that. They say he's very talented, and for huge. John Lennon to do that and just rub it in his face, even we'll just get Eric Clapton, fuck George, get him out of here.
Oh my god, I didn't know that. That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah, that's right. And so all this stuff is happening now. Prior to the Yoko Ono era, they had stopped touring, right? They were just kind of fed up with it. Now, the person video that I was talking about earlier that I watched, they were trying to say like Yoko Ono didn't cause this, blah blah blah. They were saying that the Beatles were starting to fall apart prior to that.
Yeah.
I would argue though that I think the Beatles were catalyzed into falling apart with Yoko Ono right there. And I kind of think it fueled the fire of John's ego. And I think that combination just kind of ruined everything, because what happens next, they release Abbey Road, and this is when Paul and John get into the fight that I talked about earlier. All Paul does is suggest that they go live. John calls him crazy, says, "You're stupid, that we don't play live anymore. The Beatles don't do that anymore." They get in a big fight. John and Yoko run out to their limo. They speed off, and then that's when John says, "From now on, it's just you and me."
Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I was kind of shocked by that. Like, I knew the whole joke, oh, Yoko Ono split up the Beatles, blah blah blah, but I never really knew exactly what happened, what was going on, the fights, everything like that. Now, if you watch interviews of, like, Paul McCartney talks about the breakup of the Beatles, and he says, it was John, which I guess technically it was, but again, all I'm trying to say is, would that have happened without Yoko? Would John's ego have been so inflated and he'd been so angry and wanting to take the band in a different direction, just not wanting to listen to anyone, without Yoko Ono probably whispering in his ear and, telling him to do whatever he wants? And she facilitated and sped up
that breakdown, because then you go, okay, if you have a bad relationship and there's just add that more friction, that's just going to make it. So I would agree with your assessment. I think that Yoko Ono in theory did break up the Beatles. And what's so shocking to me, I'm sorry not to cut you off, but what's so shocking to me is that they got back together for the Let It Be album, which has some of the greatest songs of all time on it, and they played together on the rooftop at Apple.
Yes,
and they hate each other. That's incredible.
I know, they are performers through and through. Like, they were able to come back together and perform that, and that was pretty incredible. Now, I remember there was one final fight that Paul was going to release a solo album at the same time the Beatles were releasing something. I kind of forget. It doesn't really have to do anything with Yoko Ono, but it was right around that time that was happening. But I can't remember the name of Paul's album. But it doesn't really matter anyway. The whole thing is what I'm trying to say is that I think at first when I came into this, I thought Yoko Ono was the sole person that broke the Beatles up. I thought she came in, told the Beatles that they sucked, said, John, you could do better without them, and then just broke them up just like that. But I really think now that I look at it, I think it's more of a combination. I really do think John Lennon was not a good person to work with. I think he was kind of stubborn.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think Yoko Ono just fueled that fire. And, you know, and he was doing like artsy stuff with her at the time too. So I think John kind of said like, you know what, I'm bigger than the Beatles now.
Oh, 100%. I think he always thought that too.
Yeah. I think he thought, you know, John Lennon and Yoko Ono are bigger than the Beatles, and we're going to be bigger than the Beatles ever were, and I don't need them anymore. So that's that. And I think that's what happened. I think it was a combination of John and Yoko Ono. So you could technically say that Yoko Ono didn't go in and say, you know, break this up. She might have said that behind the scenes. We'll probably never know. She might have been, you know, telling John like, oh, you should just leave. You should leave. You know, but it's just a combination of the two. So you could definitely say that Yoko still has some blame.
Yeah.
I
think you're right. Yeah. I think that's definitely the truth. And I think that when you have a toxic person, which it sounds like she was adding a toxic element to it.
Yeah.
And you have that toxicity on your side, and you already believe in yourself that you're bigger than what you've created. Yeah. Then that just spells trouble big time.
Absolutely. And you know, so that's my thoughts on it. And one final thing that I wanted to add, because I found this very interesting. So I started watching interviews with Yoko Ono, and this is why I say she's a tough person to figure out like what her personality actually is. And I don't know if I'm getting tricked by like some kind of narcissistic like sociopath, but she seems like genuinely like kind in videos and like willing to talk and like emotional about John. Like she really loved him.
Yeah.
But then she has those songs that we listened to at the beginning of the show, and it's like no one could make this other than a psychopath, a narcissistic psychopath.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's so true. That's so true. Yeah.
So it's just very confusing to me, because like I watch those interviews and I almost want to give her the benefit of the doubt and say maybe it was all John. Maybe Yoko was really strung along by John, saying like, "Oh, I don't want to go into the studio," and he's like, "No, you should come in. You're gonna work with me," or, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
So
right.
But at the same time, then I listen to the music and I'm like, this lady's crazy. So
yes, 100%. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So.
And there was always, I think that John really bought into what she was all about. I mean, you saw that.
Yes.
Yeah, that Rolling Stone cover where he's naked and she's fully clothed and he's wrapped around her, and you know they have that album. It's Double Fantasy that they recorded together apparently. Mm-hmm. It's just like a total like abandonment, like, and I guess like you wonder like what she was providing that the Beatles couldn't, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you are the most famous person in the world, right? You know, super rich. You could have anyone, but you go for this like toxic person. I don't know. I don't know what got him into her. I'm just saying, if I'm with someone and I bring them around to my group of friends and everyone gets pissed off, then maybe something's up.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's so true. It is so true. Yeah, that's really interesting. But wow, really good. You really shedded. You really shone some light on this whole thing, because I didn't really realize it was that nuanced, but you could definitely see how it would play out that way for sure.
Yeah.
As you were saying that, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of little things that were happening. And like I said, that video that I watched about it, he keeps trying to say, oh, there's a lot of things going on prior. But I just think it was Yoko and John. And, you know, Yoko can't walk away from this completely blameless. I think she has to shoulder some of the burden.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you're right. I think that's a fair assessment. I think that definitely she was a huge catalyst, like you said. And you wonder if things would have been different. You wonder if there was some compromise on the band, if they were just an album group, if Yoko never came into the fold, how things would go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were together in reality for a long time before John Lennon got shot. I mean,
yeah, I think like 13 years, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and they created music together, and they had those art pieces and photos and things like that. So maybe they were onto something. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they were just in love and they just wanted each other, and that was it.
That was all.
World wasn't getting in their way.
Wow, how do you like that? That's interesting. It reminds me of you and your fiance, your love story.
Oh, oh yeah. Is she my Yoko?
She's Yoko, but in a better way, perhaps. We still hate each other, you and I, but we still get together every week to do this show. So
that's true. That's true.
Well, that was really. Tell you what, I'm shocked, and I'm interested. It was interesting. Your breakdown was pretty interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and thanks for coming along for the ride. Before we go though, I guess we'll tease something. Why? No, we can't even tease it because freaking Kanye's not giving us any hints. He keeps delaying this album. I was gonna say our next episode is gonna be reviewing the Kanye album, but we don't even know when the hell it's gonna drop.
Yeah, because it was supposed to come out I thought like the end of 2023, and then it was January something, and now didn't they get pushed back again?
I think it did. Now it's possibly sometime in February, and it's just a mess. I don't know if he's just like trolling everyone or he's trying to hype it up.
It's on iTunes right now. I think you could listen to like a song or listen to a snippet. It's on there.
Yeah,
it was anyway.
There is one song. Okay, sorry, I just found it here. Kanye West and T.Y. Dollar Sign say Vultures won't be released on January 19th, maybe February 9th.
Maybe February. What do they have to get ready? It should be. I think it's done. They listened to it. They had a listening party like as usual.
I think they're just trying to hype it up. I think that's what they're trying to do. And I gotta say, little preview for that episode whenever we record it, but I like some Kanye songs, but some of his albums are not good. That's just my opinion. Some of them are pretty bad. But
you're right. It'll be interesting to see what his chart performance is like after he essentially went on a rampage and defiled an entire culture and group of people and everything else. And did you see his latest? Well, he keeps posting the half naked pictures of that. Is her name Bianca?
Yeah.
And she looks more like Kim Kardashian than Kim Kardashian. It's so wild. It's so random.
She does, doesn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. And now he has those jaws. You see, he got the metal teeth.
Yeah, he has titanium
teeth.
dentures or something.
And I heard that he got all of his teeth removed for that. Is that true, or are they like a cap, like a grill?
He said they're okay. Here it is, right here. Kanye West rep confirms he has permanent titanium dentures, rumored to cost $850,000.
What is wrong with this guy, man? Oh my gosh, genius level when it comes to musicianship.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just a loose cannon. Just can't do it.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. Everything I'm seeing here say that it is confirmed, but
wow, that is something else.
Yeah, that's wild. I can't even. What kind of mindset do you have to be in to get something like that?
Yeah, that's totally different mindset. That's really interesting.
Oh, Kanye. Well, I hope his album's good.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. We'll give it the old we'll go with an open mind. Hopefully there's no screaming on there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And since there's no screaming on this episode, go ahead and smash that sub button, smash that like button. Check out some of the videos that Ice is going to link here that we discussed previously. We have a treasure trove of videos and content that people would enjoy, wouldn't you say?
We really do. I wonder how many episodes we have at this point, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot. It's enough. It's hundreds of hours of content. I think we could say that now. Yeah. So
literally hundreds.
You want to listen to us talk about Smile. You want to listen to us talk about Bob Dylan. You want to listen to us talk about Jimmy Buffett. I mean, it's all there. Sometimes multi-part episodes that Dixon wonderfully crafted. I know we had our 4-parter with Dylan, and that was fantastic. And there's so much information there.
Yes, and, for the most part, we haven't really gotten railroaded in the comments all that much. I mean, we our big thing now lately, and I think what we enjoy doing is our reaction videos.
Yeah,
we've done a lot of reactions. So, like, I think one of my favorite reaction videos that we've done was the Tool reaction, because that really turned us on to some Tool music, and I think it's one that all the Tool listeners out there will enjoy, because of that. That was just a fun one to kind of navigate together, because I think you need a buddy for that kind of music so you're not in the dark totally.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're up to 2,500 views on that, Dixon. Did you know that?
2,500 views. Wow. You know, we started from the bottom and now we're slightly above the bottom. And it's incredible. It's an incredible feeling, and really, really happy that everybody's here with us.
It really is. 234 subs, guys. Let's try to, you know what? I'm calling it right now. Dixon.
Okay, let's call it.
We're going to get to 1,000 by the end of the year.
Okay. Yes, the year of 1,000.
Year of 1,000. That's what this is. Year of 1,000.
I like that. I like that's an ambitious goal. I like it. I think it's achievable, just because once people hear this stuff, they're going to love it. But the tech team has to make a promise to each and every viewer out there that there will be timely uploads,
weekly uploads. Right, we gotta talk to that friggin' guy. I don't know. We'll get him on it. I bet he'll upload this video tonight. I'm gonna bet on that.
Well, that would be awesome. Deserves a round of applause for sure to do the one job. Job he had.
Tech team, all right.
I love it.
Not like he's sitting there for 3 hours doing it, but it's fine.
Hard work doesn't go unnoticed. It's true. It's keep your nose to the grindstone on that. It's fantastic.
That's right. Oh man,
love it.
Well, guys, thanks for watching. Like Dixon said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you didn't like it, just hit the dislike button too. We don't even care.
Yeah, and if you're actually a Yoko Ono fan, tell us why you like Yoko Ono.
Yeah,
that'd be good.
Yeah. Interact with us. Talk to us. Leave us a comment. And we will see you in the next one.
Peace.